Hi folks, welcome to this video on attribution theory. The name at the top is Wiener, Wiener, however you want to pronounce it. I probably haven't pronounced it right anyway, but that's the psychologist who did a lot of the work on attribution theory, and it's their model that we're looking at just below us now. I suppose the first thing we best do is look at the word attribution. What is attribution? What is an attribute? Okay, so let's give a little definition at the bottom here. An attribute is basically a perceived reason for a result. So in other words, why do you think you won or lost? That is what an attribute is. So it's the reasons that we give for winning or losing. So not just winning, not just losing, the reasons we give for winning or losing. And the model says that we can categorize them into what we can call on this side locus of causality, and on this side what we can basically refer to as stability. Okay, so the four key attributes or categories of attributes, as you can see here, are effort and ability, luck and difficulty, or sometimes known as task difficulty. Exactly the same thing. Now what we mean here is, what is this locus of causality, this internal, external? Internal, effort and ability are in your control. They are internal to you. How much effort you put in and your own personal ability levels, they are both internal to you. Luck, weather conditions, decisions made by an official, a referee, an umpire, for or against you, that is outside of your control. Okay? All that, stuff about, you make your own luck. A lot of rubbish. You either get lucky or you don't. Equally, difficulty, what we basically mean there is the quality of the opposition or the demands of the task that you are faced with. They are either high or low, somewhere in between, but again, they are outside of your control. Okay? If we then come over onto this side, this stability issue, unstable and stable. Stable means these attributes are fixed for the duration of the competition, the contest, the race, whatever. So my ability and the quality of my opponents is fixed, not forever, or else what's the point in training? But for the length of this race, the length of this competition, I am as good as I am. My opponent is as good as he, she, or they are. Okay, so they are stable. Unstable are effort and luck, because these can change second by second, minute by minute. I can just suddenly up my effort levels, or I can just decide to reduce them. Okay, I can get lucky or I can get unlucky very, very quickly. So these change quite a bit. So you do need to make sure that you are aware that there are internal ones, ability and effort, and external ones, luck and task difficulty. And there are unstable ones, effort and luck, because they can change at any moment, and stable ones, ability and task difficulty, because they are fixed for the duration of the competition. Now I'll just get rid of all that, and I'm just going to move this up here a little bit, just so we've got a bit more space, because there's something else that we now need to look at. Okay, we can categorise people accordingly. Okay, we can categorise athletes, performers and teams as either high achievers or low achievers. They win a lot if you're a high achiever, they don't win a lot if they're low achievers. Okay, now attribution theory states that high achievers, those that win a lot, okay, will attribute success and failure differently to low achievers, those that lose a lot. Okay, so let's have a look how they do that. What will high achievers do? Those teams, those performers that win a lot, and I'm just going to write that in there as a little reminder. Okay, when they win, it is all about ability and effort. Now, before you start thinking, not always, we're talking about their psychological approach. Okay, whenever a high achiever wins, they will always attribute that success to ability and effort. I won because I or we were brilliant. Our ability level is very, very high, and we worked our backsides off. We really, really tried hard. Our ability and effort were high. When they get beaten, which isn't very often, they put it down to luck and task difficulty. So luck in terms of we had some awful decisions go our way. We're missing some of our key players due to injury, and that's, We can't do anything about that. We were playing into a headwind, and then when it was their turn, the wind died down in the second half, something like that. And they'll also put defeat down to difficulty. In other words, when they get beat by an opponent, they will say things like, look, on that form, they'd have beaten anyone in the world on that day. And what can you do about that? Sometimes that happens and there's nothing you can do about it. They have that kind of psychological approach. Why? Well, quite simply, if you think of it this way, what are these two things? These are internal. So when we win, it's all down to us. It's factors under our control that allows us to win. When we get beat, or when we get beaten, sorry, it's down to factors out of our control. Nothing we can do about that. And what does that do? It protects your confidence. Okay? There's nothing worse than doing what a low achiever does, which is what we're going to look at now. And they do the exact opposite to high achievers. Okay? When they win, when they see success, which is very rare for a low achiever, it's down to difficulty and luck. I.e., we only won because the opposition were much weaker than us, and we got some really lucky calls, lucky breaks go our way. When they get beat, when they are defeated, which is often, it's down to ability and effort. We aren't any good, and we just don't try. That destroys your self-confidence, and you carry that forwards into your next game. That's the science and the psychology behind attribution theory. These high achievers, they win a lot because when we win, it's down to ability and effort, and we carry that through into our next game. And that increases the chances of winning again. When we get defeat, which is rare, it's factors outside of our control. And how often can factors be outside of our control? Not often, because we're a good team. Whereas a low achieving team, teams at the bottom of the league, teams that are relegated, things like that, they will put success down to difficulty. And look, as we've said, we only win when we play weaker teams than us, and we get lucky decisions. And we get beaten, which is often due to our ability and effort. We don't have a high ability level, and we don't show much effort. And that just destroys your self-confidence, as we said, and you take that through into your next game. So in other words, low achievers, when they win, it's due to factors outside of their control. And when they get beat, it's due to factors within their control. So they do the exact opposite to what a high achiever does. What we've got to do as coaches, as psychologists, is turn that around. Turn a low achiever into a high achiever. Now that is also a point worth mentioning. If I just get rid of that mark. Just move this diagram over to that side there. How do we do that? So, I've got a high achiever. Okay. I've got a low achiever. Two categories. How do I turn one into the other? It's a process called attribution retraining, where you simply switch the attributes around. If you're a low achiever and you finally win a game, put it down to their ability and effort. Say, look, we've seen a big increase in the effort you've shown, okay? You put some good moves on today. It's a joy to watch. Fantastic. It'll just get their confidence going in the right direction. When they get beat, put it down to factors out of the control. The ref gave some awful decisions against you. What can you do about that? Not a lot. It happens from time to time. And look, the opposition, they're top of the league or they're near the top. They can beat anyone on that form. And you can't help it sometimes when that does take place, when a team plays like that. Those subtle changes will start to have a shift in the mentality on your performance. So we can change low achievers into high achievers through attribution retraining. Now, following on from that, there's something called the self-serving bias. Now, that picture of Sir Alex Ferguson, he's probably the master at this. He's probably the master at something called using the self-serving bias. Okay? So what is it? I mean, let's face it, in terms of high achievers, he's right up there, and his players are right up there with the best in the world across all sports. So what is a self-serving bias? Now, maybe we should have put that in speech marks, but that's essentially what it is. What is a self-serving bias? It's the use of attributions to protect self-esteem or self-confidence. In other words, it is exactly what a high achiever does. And as we've just discovered from that previous slide, what does a high achiever always do? when they are successful, it is always down to ability and effort. When they suffer defeat, which like we said is rare, it's down to difficulty and luck. How many times have you watched a post-match interview with Sir Alex Ferguson where you thought, man, you were lucky to get away with a draw there, lucky to get away with a win, you know, in the last minute Fergie time, all those cliches, and yet he's come out and praised these players, said nonsense, absolutely brilliant, they worked hard, you know, they're up against it today, and you thought, Sir Alex, were you watching the same game as me? I don't understand it. He's using self-serving bias. If he always puts success down to ability and effort, his players' self-esteem and self-confidence is protected and elevated. If he always puts defeat down to difficulty and luck, i.e. when they got beat in the Champions League final by Barcelona, he openly said, there was nothing we could do against that team today. They played some of the most beautiful football you've ever seen. That's difficulty. You can't do anything about that when a team turns up like that and plays like that. There's nothing you can do. And he always used to blame the referee, the crowd, playing too much time, not playing enough injury time, all that stuff. He would always put the defeat down to factors outside of Man U's control. So again, success was always internal, defeat was always external. That's what he would always do. Finally then, the final thing about attribution theory. There's something called learned helplessness. This is if anything, this is the opposite to a self-serving bias, okay? Hopefully you've never experienced it, but it does happen. Performer feels that failure is inevitable. You're going into this game, this competition, this race, whatever it is, thinking, what is the point? We are going to get hammered. We are going to get destroyed by this opponent, these opponents, whatever it is. So it's where people who have learned helplessness are typically your low achievers. They've been on a bad run of results and they're going to this next game thinking nothing's going to change. We're going to get beat here as well. So this is the thing we want to avoid. We don't like learned helplessness. As a result, they just feel like they've got no control over the situation. No matter what I do, it is not going to be good enough to halt this run of results and to stop this defeat from taking place. So it's a really, really bad situation to be in. And like I said, it happens a lot with low achievers. And as we said, you notice what low achievers do. It's caused by putting your defeats down to ability and effort. I'm not good enough and I don't try. It's putting your defeats down to those internal factors again. Okay? There's no point in saying it's also about putting success down to difficulty and look at external factors. Learn helplessness, you're not going to win. We're not going to get beat this game. You don't even have to attribute success because it's just not going to happen to you. That's your mindset. That's the problem with this. And just finally, there are two types of learned helplessness. People who have general learned helplessness, don't name any names out loud, but I've got a few in my head from when I was at school. People who are just not good at any sport. If you want an example of that, or if you want a specific example, not good at, let's say, water sports. Not bad on a pitch, you're running quite good, but when it comes, I am no good at any water sport, swimming, sailing, skiing, anything like that, I'm just useless. I'm absolutely useless at it. So I would have general learned helplessness towards those kind of activities. In contrast to that, much more common in professional sport is specific learned helplessness. So what we'd say there is something like, let's say you've got a performer let's say you've got a centre forward in football whose self-confidence has gone a little bit. The passing's still great, the tackling's still good, they're running off the ball well, but they haven't scored in about 10, 12, 15 games, as forwards often do. So they will lose. So they'll have specific learned helplessness shooting, so not good at a certain aspect. So we'll put in brackets there. Shooting. That can be in any sport. So, you've got a basketball player whose dribbling's good, passing good, blocking and intercepting and rebounding's really good, but they're going through a phase where they just can't score a basket. with any regularity. That would be specific learning helplessness, specific to that certain skill. Whereas general learning helplessness is, I'm useless at basketball. I'm used to all skills within that sport. I'm used to all hand-eye coordination skills, if you want to think of it, or hand-eye coordination sports, if you want to think of it like that. So they're all the factors associated with and terms associated with attribution theory.